Hello everybody, Andy here, and today I want to help you play the new edition of Kill Team to the fullest. And so I'm going to go over 7 tips that can help you or that you're playing wrong. I don't know what I've titled this video yet, but I've probably used the number 7. That's a lie. There's actually like 14 or 15, but 7 sounds good. Anyway, let's get on with it. Basically, this video is going to have a bunch of tips that are going to help you play the new edition of Kill Team. Some of them are for brand new players, where I'm going to just give you kind of a hot tip that people from the last edition probably already know, whereas some of them are going to be kind of advisories for people from the old edition to let you know that, hey, that rule has changed or updated in a significant way. But either way, whichever side of the tracks you're from, this video is going to help you out. But of course, we don't need my face for this, so let's go over to the top down. Lovely. So we've got the accoutrement that we need here. We've got a ladder, because that's going to come up. We need Razorwire. Everybody wants to know how this works. We've got 2 different buildings, because, you know, climbing, that's a thing, all this. We've got our nice, trusty measuring widget. Inches, don't know what those are, but it's fine. We've got some orders. We've got some dice. This is all going to come up, and our beautiful models today that are going to be modeling these rules for us if we need them, and we will, is Strikeforce Justian, he's not called that anymore, sorry, Space Marine Captain, who might be called Justian. Hey, if you want to see this guy being played, go and check out my Battle Report channel called Tactical Skew, and you can see him fighting off against the Legionaries. And then his counterpart, a Space Marine hero Death Guard, who I converted to look like Justian himself. But then never finished that project. Anyway, cool. Okay, let's get straight into it. He says straight into it at 2 minutes into the video. Of course he does. Right. First things first, this is for everybody, mainly for people from the old edition, to be honest. When you deploy your models, you always deploy on conceal now. This is a huge change. It speeds deployment up so much that honestly, this edition of Kill Team has done a great job of speeding up deployment and getting to the actual game, and that starts with you are always concealed, and you can always swap to an engage in turn 1. Really speeds things up. Great stuff. You can now move through your own models. Imagine the scenario. You're this chap here. This is your friend, obviously, and you want to get to here. That's suddenly a huge move. You're going to have to move and dash to get there. No longer. You can simply move directly through your model. Now, obviously, I don't need to tell you, refined gentlemen, that when you want to get around a corner like this, you should measure from the back of your base. There you go. It's a full 4 and up, not from the front of your base, because then it's really, you need the back of your base to clear it so you can move, not the front. You know that. That's not even a tip. That's a freebie. We all know that. And I know you know that. Lovely. You can move through your own models. Easy. Right. Climbing has changed somewhat. So look at our 2 buildings now. If we look at this bad boy here, this is exactly 3 inches from the ground, maybe a bit under, who knows. And this is a little bit over 4 inches, 3 inches, sorry. There you go. Lovely. Almost 3.5, 3.25, I'd say. 3 and 5/16, if I had to guess. If I had to use my measuring eye. Well, good news. So in the last edition of Kill Team, you had to be next to a climbable wall, and that would allow you to get up to the top. Now that is no longer the case. You can be in the middle of nowhere, as long as you're within 3 inches of the thing you're climbing, you can just go straight up. That's why, for example, the climbing equipment no longer exists. We don't need it. Everyone can do it. Lovely. However, it also needs to be noted that when you're trying to climb these, you actually measure not from the kill zone floor for your 3 inches, of course. No. You measure from the top of your base, because your base does have a physical size, I guess. Width, dimension, Z-axis, I don't know. I think it's about 3 mil. And if you do that, then suddenly, even though this is slightly over 3 inches from the floor, you can now get on top of it. Amazing. Cool. Climbing. Easy. You can climb in the middle of nowhere. You don't need to be climbing up a wall. Excellent. Now, let's talk about this piece of terrain. This is, of course, from Volcus. So we're going to see this a lot. We're going to see a lot of it. It's going to be everywhere. Now, this is something that, of course, if you watch my battle report, you will see me notice it live as I'm trying to use this piece of terrain. However, you cannot actually climb up the back of this. If you want to climb it, you need to be there, and you need to climb up this side. Because the way climbing works is you measure up to, if we measure it like this, so what do we see there? Right from there, if we're climbing to that bit there, you go to the highest point, you then go to the next inch increment, which is 5, and then you would move on. However, how does that work? There's no skipped movement in Kill Team, is there? So that would be 4 up and then 1 in. But that puts you there, and that is not a legal placement. So you can't move onto here with a 40mm base. I don't think you can even do it with a 32mm base. I've got another friend over here who has a 32mm base. If we then try to climb up here, that is indeed, it goes to the 4 inches, which means it's going to cost us 5 inches to climb, which leaves us 1 inch to get on. So if you put it there and you measure it from the bird's eye view, 1 inch, that leaves you there. And that is not a legal placement. So there you go. You cannot climb these Vulcus large ruins from the back. You have to climb them from the sides. Good to know. Right. Okay, big one. Razorwire. Razorwire is a very interestingly worded rule, isn't it, everybody? It talks about 1 inch going across and blah, blah, blah. Let me just tell you how it works. So it has a slightly confusing wording, and we're going to show you what it actually does. This is our razor wire. Let's go here. If you're moving, okay, sorry, razor wire, first of all, it talks about a 1 inch when you cross it. That 1 inch is not, as some believed, aka myself, when I first read it, an aura around it. That's not what it means when it talks about a 1 inch. It means 1 inch when you cross it. It is referring to 1 inch above it. So the reason it's talking about 1 inch above it is so that if you fly, you can move across it. Otherwise, you have to go over it like that, as per normal, to clarify. Great. So how does that work? What does that mean? It's an extra 2 inches when you climb it. That means instead of being a 2 inch climb, it becomes a 4 inch climb. And you've got to end up here to cross it. So allow me to show you how you work this out. Because, you know, again, climbing, it can sound a little bit confusing. You're climbing, you go to the highest number, like you got to round up, etc. Here is our strike. It's not Justin. Who is it? Space Marine Captain. He has a 6 inch move. Cool. You go from the front of the base to the front of the base, or you can go from the back of the base to the back of the base. Doesn't matter. But we do front of base to front of base because that's how I measure, unless I'm going around a corner. If you have a regular barricade, we'll put it there, okay? Pretend it's not razor wire. We know that this costs 2 inches to climb. So you ought to think about this in terms of movement tax, okay? Don't think about, you know, doing the trigonometry. Don't get out your calculator. You don't need to learn algebra. It's a tax. Instead of being, okay, it's across and then it's up for 1 3/4, which rounds up to 2, and then you don't get free movement, so you move, and then it's a 2 inch drop, but you don't count the first 2 inches of a drop, and then you continue. No, it's a movement tax. You know that it costs you 2 inches to climb. So simply, with your model here, move this back 2 inches. There you go. That's how far I move. It's a tax. I know that I can move 4 inches if I have a 2 inch climb. Easy. So there's no point in even measuring the first 2 inches of this 6 inch move. Great. Now, this is a 4 inch climb. How does that work? So, it's exactly the same. Think about the movement tax. You don't need to think, okay, I move along, I go up 2, but it's really then extra 2 inches, okay, and then I move. No, no, no. It's a 4 inch tax. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how far I move. Now, that means I then cannot complete the climb. So I actually can't get over it. In fact, if we go here, and we then take that 4 inch on a 40mm base, in certain parts of this bit of terrain, you cannot complete that move. So be very careful. there's a thinner part, which is actually that bit. But if you move that way, then the actual width of this is actually too thick. So it's fine with a 32mm base. I mean, you know, you literally move from there to there. But yeah, there you go. Also, you know, another additional one, if you haven't heard me say it about 50 times just there is no free horizontal movement. You always pay for all of this. You never go from, for example, 1 inch climb 2 inch. There you go. Easy. I then want to talk about ladders very briefly. Now, this is one that probably only I got confused with. It's because I believe that there was a core rule that said anytime you climb, your minimum climb is 2 inches. Okay? That actually isn't quite what the core rule is. The core rule is phrased a little bit more loosely than that. And it says that anytime you climb, assume that the vertical height is 2 inches. Right? Okay? Therefore, if there is a rule that says count the vertical height as 1 inch, then you pay 1 inch. You don't always have to round up to 2. So if we have this here, there you go. This is now a 1 inch climb. You don't have to pay a minimum of 2 inches or anything. So that means that you can use this here. So this would normally be a 2 inch climb just to get over this wall, but I can make it a 1 inch climb, which is really going to help some people get out of their deployment zones, like just paying that 1 inch to get over a otherwise small wall. You don't even have to use it up here. So ladders are very, very useful, as is Razorwire. These two things are going to be your most commonly seen equipment, especially on Vulcus, where you don't really need that many regular barricades for cover, it seems. Right, we then talk about valid target. So valid targets are what really matter now, and I'm going to get the exact rules for you. So when it comes to the old edition of Kill Team, people thought of different things, basically. Now, valid target is slightly different, and we're going to check out exactly what it is. And it might seem like I'm talking a little bit vaguely, like this isn't a tip, you're just reading a rule. I promise you, even though valid target comes under shooting, this isn't the only thing that valid target is referencing. It will come up in many TAC ops as well, and how you score them. You will need to be inside of a valid target or not inside of a valid target. There you go. So keep in mind, if the intended target has an engage order, it's a valid target if it's visible to the active operative. If the intended target has a conceal order, it's a valid target if it's visible to the active operative and not in cover. There you go. These are very, very minorly different to how it used to be. And yes, we will mainly be thinking of these in terms of can I shoot the target, but it's also for other things. So memorize valid target. There you go. Okay, back to our terrain. Let's say we've got our captain up here and we've got this guy over here. Okay. Now, drawing our cover lines, they're both 1 inch away from this lovely piece of heavy terrain. So if he were to shoot him, we would draw our targeting line directly through this piece of heavy terrain. Just keep in mind that any heavy terrain that this model is on, that is attached to its vantage point, does not count as heavy. So this is going to come up again quite a bit in Vulcus because you have that really nice piece of very tall terrain. So doesn't matter. Likewise, over here, if you draw it through there now, doesn't matter. It's still connected to here. Trust me, this will come up in Vulcus for you. So heavy terrain connected to your vantage point does not give you obscuring. So there you go. No obscuring if you're shooting like that. However, and this is a big change to the new edition, keep in mind that vantage points do provide light cover for whoever is on it. Now, of course, if he is on another piece of terrain that's up here, then it's fine. He wouldn't, you don't get cover. It's still all about the targeting lines. But from here, if he's on a conceal, you aren't able to shoot him from down here because he has light cover. There you go. This is, again, a big change, but it's definitely something that you are going to need to be aware of. And it's really going to change how we will play around with vantage points and trying to get on them or off them. There's been a lot of changes around vantage points and snipers in general, so keep that in mind. However, you will also notice that this delightful Space Marine captain has a plasma pistol. So this isn't so much a rules mechanics tip as just a bit of a heads up. Plasma pistols are no longer the be-all end-all. If you're looking back and you're Googling, you want to build one of the old teams, and you're thinking, oh, how should I load out my leader? You will hear everybody say the same piece of advice, and that is, take the plasma pistol. Doesn't matter if the melee weapon that is the only option to go with it is bad, take the plasma. That is no longer the default answer. The plasma pistol is fine. You don't need to redo any of the teams you used to have. You don't need to change it. The plasma pistol was still good, but it is no longer the best option in every circumstance, whereas it used to be always the best. So just keep in mind that when you're going to build your next team, perhaps, it's not always the plasma pistol you want to pick. Heavy. Now, heavy, neither of these two have it. I guess this guy, look at this guy. It was one of the Death Guard Space Marine heroes that I wanted to be my sniper. So I gave him an Eliminator sniper. How cool. There you go. So this would be a heavy weapon. Now, if this weapon simply has the keyword heavy, obviously I'm mainly talking to the old kill teamers here from the last edition. Heavy has changed. Heavy now just means you cannot move at all before or after your shooting attack. Can't move at all, can't dash, no movement. However, most guns, or some guns, sorry, will have heavy dash in brackets or heavy reposition in brackets. And if they have that, it means heavy you cannot move except to do this action. And if it's a dash, that means you can move your 3. If it's a reposition, you can move your move stat. But you then cannot dash as well. Or at all, in fact. If it's heavy reposition, you cannot dash. You can't charge and shoot, none of that. It's just what it says, reposition. Keep in mind, that vastly changes quite a few guns, by the way. Right, now, our chap up here might want to overwatch our guys down here, mightn't he? And that would now be called Counteract. Counteract is the new version of Overwatch, and one of the big changes here is that, hey, heads up, there's no negative to your hit roll now. If you're counteracting and you choose to perform a shoot action, you fire at your full ballistics, your full hit. Sorry, it's not ballistic skill anymore. At your full hit roll value. There you go. So if you're hitting on 3s normally, in the old edition, you would have then been hitting on 4s. Now, you're still just hitting on 3s. But do note that if you're on Into the Dark and you guard, that would still give you a minus to your hit score. Hit roll, hit score, I'm not sure. Okay, which brings us to a new one. Again, this isn't so much a mechanic as it is dice. Severe. Severe is a new generic rule that almost every team seems to have access to. And it's a rule that very simply means if you roll your dice and you don't get a crit, you can turn a normal into a crit. So we roll that. There you go. No crits, but actually 5 hits. Lovely. But there's no crits. So if my gun had the rule severe, I could change one of them into a crit. There you go. Now, the reason I point this out is because it is on so many weapons now. It's on so many weapons to the point that I almost think that perhaps the Kill Team devs expect a statistical dice roll to have 1 crit in it, which is interesting. So it's actually quite good to know that. There you go. Severe. You're going to see it on lots of guns. Seek. Seek used to be called no cover, but no cover was very confusing as a term because it implied that the opponent didn't have cover. No. Oh, sorry, indirect. Sorry, I was thinking of saturate. Seek. Seek means you, let me show you. Let me get my guys out. Let me get my Death Guard Justian and my other Justian. Now, if this guy's here, On a conceal, this guy's going to throw, let's say, a grenade, which used to have something called indirect, but now has seek, and wants to throw it at him. Now, obviously, he can't because he's over 2, and our targeting lines go through heavy. Cool. So I am not able to attack. But if my weapon had seek, I would be able to attack because it doesn't allow the enemy to use cover for their for intervening terrain. However, seek as a single word, very, 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 very rare. Normally, we will get seek light, which means I don't have any light terrain. Whoops. Which would mean that if this was a light piece of terrain, I would have seek light, which means they cannot use light cover as intervening terrain, but they can still use heavy cover. This, in the last edition, was game defining, and GW realized that and changed that. So we're going to see much, much less seek in the game. For example, grenades no longer have it. But do keep in mind that there is still some seek heavy, which would mean that this would be a legal shot. There you go. But it's relatively rare. You're going to see much more seek light. If you want to think of it again as this, kind of vantage points kind of give you seek light, but they don't give you seek heavy. Now I want to talk about something called free actions. Free actions. This is the same wording as it was in the last edition of Kill Team. If your model has a free, it can perform a free action. Do note that free action is free of cost, not free of restriction. Let's say our man here's run up and he's shot twice because he's an Astartes, so he can do that. And then somehow magically he gets an extra APL and it says free action, perform shoot again. Well, he can't do that because although he has the extra APL to shoot a third time, the core rules of the game stop him, and his ability for Astartes stop him from shooting a third time. Remember it. Whenever you read the word free action on a datasheet, repeat this mantra to yourself. Free of cost, not free of restriction. It must still be a legal action. A lot of Kill Team's rules boil down to that. Can you do this action? That depends. Is it legal? This is going to come up relatively often, but as long as you keep in mind that you always have the action always has to be legal to do, free of cost, not free of restriction, you're going to breeze through the rules. Don't you worry. And finally, this is, I think, a bit of an obvious one to most, but again, I just want to throw it out there. So let's say you've got yourself your objective marker. Here you go. This guy's run up. He's tapped it. Next turn. We then get next round is what I mean. He's controlling this with 3 APL. We move our guy up to it. He is now contesting it. He cannot tap it. To tap an objective, you must have more APL, not just match the APL of the opponent. So there you go. You would need to move another model there with at least 1 APL on it to be able to tap it. If you're just contesting, you do not control it. Likewise, he no longer controls it, so he cannot tap it again. But whilst you both have equal APL, controlling within your control range of the objective, you cannot tap that objective. Woo, okay. Well, hopefully some of you found that useful. I'm not saying that these are the most useful tips, but I think some of them, basically, these are the tips that I kind of came across for my first half dozen or so games that I kind of clashed into and found like, oh yeah, that's not how it's played now. Or, oops, that's a mistake I made. And so I've really just documented my own personal mistakes and put them to you as useful tips. Hopefully you have found them interesting and have found them vaguely useful. Okay, well, thank you for watching. What would be really cool is if you could let me know what you think is kind of your biggest tip, I suppose. If you're coming from the last edition, let me know what you think is the biggest change that people need to know and keep in mind. And if you're new to the game, genuinely, like, what do you think is kind of the biggest thing that trips you up the most often? Because that's always, it's very difficult for me, who's played a long time, to get in the mindset of someone that doesn't know the rules at all. So it'd actually be super helpful for me if those truly new players could let me know where they've stumbled in the rules. Obviously, after you've watched my two how to play videos over on Tactical Skew, from then on, what's still tripping you up? Let me know, and maybe I'll do a video covering it. Probably will. There you go. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good one.